Sure.
meeting the 1st of March or
Agreed.
whatever his.
I'm not viewing this discussion as being a final discussion. We're not going to dive into how many kids are going to sit in which chair. We're looking at this kind of as a satellite view, 30,000 foot view, and we're going to go through this and see, well, okay, this one seems reasonable, and then we're going to go on to the public partnerships. We're going to go on to your four things. Look at all of them and see what makes some sense.
Sure.
Okay? And we're going to throw out half the things that are on the list, and it makes a big difference if the federal government funds pre-K for the next 20 years at a substantial number. It's a lot different conversation.
Right.
Okay, but in 2 years, if they haven't funded anything and they're still talking about it, we have to move on.
What I would hope we could do, particularly in the interim, would be to this list of 7 items, get it down to 1, 2, maybe 3 at the most that are reasonably viable, so we don't spend a lot of time on in the detail of every one, and then we can concentrate on again the very small number that would make the most sense to the board, and then move on to the next, and then we can kind of blend those together in the end, and then you've got a manageable number of options to consider.
And what I'm thinking, Walter, is that we go through all your 4 steps.
Yes.
And out of each of those steps, there may be none drop out, maybe 2 or 3 that drop to the next phase, and we look at all those in more detail.
Yeah.
What may be best for the community may not be ASAD control and funding. Okay, so that's what we have to look at all this.
Can I suggest that when we do get to about 3 that are viable, that outreach pulls out a survey and see what the public thinks?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's important. I think we could do that.
Like you did last time.
Yeah, because that's the response you'll get is all those cars in parking.
Okay.
One thing I'll throw out now is what meeting are we going to talk about the second area, which is I think it was the public-private partnership. When are we going to brainstorm those?
Well, we got to find out if there's anyone who wants to partner with us.
Let's
Not necessarily.
let's
throw out the ideas first, and then
let's do this, Terry. Let's let Tom take this initial blush in his committee, and then next month in your committee, we'll develop a list for the public-private ones, and then in April he can kind of start to flesh those out maybe, and kind of just take it sort of systematically, and as I said, methodically, going through them one group at a time until we get them all kind of lined out what's actually possible. I mean, one of the issues that I think that we're going to have or discuss when we actually get down to some of the more nuts and bolts is, what are the obstacles in doing it? Funding certainly is one of them. Public-private partnerships have some additional obstacles in trying to get everybody on the same page. But I forget now the fancy buzzwords, for looking at the pluses and the deltas and the whatever. But I think that also at some point becomes a part of this evaluation. But that would be my suggestion, is let Tom take this initial blush at it. Next committee meeting, you can go ahead and start on the next one, and we'll just kind of take it one step at a time. Does that sound all right?
yeah, that sounds good. But yeah, I thought it was good to discuss tonight so that everybody knows where we're going.
Agreed.
Okay. Anything else on 1C? And if anybody has an idea that they come up with after this meeting's over, where do you want it sent, Mike?
I think they should just email us, but maybe I can work with Ms. Blank and do a survey to get some ideas out there, because I think that would not hurt. And let me think that through. For now, anyone who's watching, email me your ideas, but let me talk to Ms. Blank and maybe talk to Elijah and see what our options are. But maybe we could do a survey, some sort of repository for people to submit ideas too, because you know, like, I know I said it sheepishly, but we do want to know if there's community people want to partner with us, and just to give them an opportunity to express that concern or I'm sorry, that option and that hope. And so that, yeah, for now, we'll have people email us, and we'll work on some sort of survey in the meantime that I can bring back to you, if that's okay with you, Mr. Kerr.
Okay, sounds good. We'll move on to number 2, the East Pike roof project. And Jared, I think you were going to cover.
Yeah, as we are getting closer to spring here, we are looking more and more at the East Pike replacement of the roof. Eric Grower from CJL is here tonight. We are about ready to put the mechanical work for the replacement out to bid. That was sent out to the board late last week. We will be looking for an agenda item possibly on the board agenda for next Monday to get approval to put that out to bid. Eric's here for any questions, concerns that the board may have before we have that board agenda and then put the actual work out to bid.
Does anybody have any questions? Like you said, this proposal was sent out to the, definitely the committee. I don't know, Jared, if you sent it out to the whole board or not, but they have the drawings somewhat complete. I don't know if they're what percentage complete they are.
Drawings and specs are complete, unless any comments anybody has for them. We're ready to go out to bid upon your approval.
When you say complete, you have both the roof replacement and the administrative HVAC administrative wing, is that correct?
No, this is just for the roof replacement. I mean, the roof replacement includes the main roof, and it also includes the, I'm sorry.
They're good microphones. I don't know if they're that good though. So
The roof replacement includes the main roof plus the administrative roof, but this does not include the administrative upgrades. That's a separate project. We're working on that. It will be bid separately.
Yeah, the HVAC replacement is not scheduled to happen until the summer of 2023. So that's part of the discussion under 2B there, is just making sure that the committee and the board are aware of that. And I know we had, in the way we originally kind of not fit out because we went through a state contract, but we broke the roof replacement for the admin wing out completely separate from the actual school wing, and just wanting to make sure that the board and the committee still want us to go in the direction of doing this roof replacement summer of 2023. I mean, the admin roof replacement summer of 2023 at the same time we're doing the HVAC replacement.
You mean 22?
No,
No,
2023. Just the school building part will get done this summer. The admin wing will get done next summer of 2023. Yes, above us, when the HVAC is being replaced.
yeah, Jared, I recall this all being discussed already. I don't know if it was at the previous committee meeting or when I reviewed the notes maybe from a meeting or something.
I think, Terry, what has us bothered is the time frame of 2023 on some of this work. It seems forever away from getting done.
Are you only talking about doing summer work? Or does this start in 2022 and you don't stop till you're finished?
Well, the school building would be done this summer, and then there'd be an end, and then the admin wing would start back up in the spring of 2023.
You can't do it in the fall. It would disrupt school?
What is this?
Well, I think the reason that we're moving in that direction is the 2 rooftop units that you have here. We have an alternate bid set up, so you won't have to spend the money on that if we do it when this building, the HVAC, is done.
Yeah, I kind of.
Right? If we did it this summer, we have to pick those units up and put them back down. But if we wait on that, you'll save that money. We're making an alternate bid out of it, so you will be able to pick that or not.
Yeah.
Why
I
is
forgot.
on this paper, it says East Pike roof replacement summer 2022, 2023. What's the East Pike roof replacement 23?
I consider this part of East Pike. I consider the admin.
Okay, so this roof, the administration wing would be done in 23, but under the 22 contract. And then the second thing, then the administration wing HVAC is only the HVAC wing.
Yes, the admin.
Yes, so we contract for the roof and the main building the whole enchilada. And then, but they won't put this roof on for when the HVAC stuff.
Yes.
Right, right. And we had walked all through this. When we developed the schedule, we found that it couldn't work to do all the work on both the main building and the admin wing in 22. So this was the best fit for an alternate schedule. So, and like you said, this has all been discussed, and I thought it was already all agreed upon.
And if that's the case, sir, I will reach out to the roofer and make sure he is aware. And he was aware that this was going to be a possibility, that he is aware that we are not doing the admin wing roof this summer.
Right, because we talked about storing the insulation and
Somewhere.
Yeah, I'm fine, I'm good.
I had a question on this sheet, Terry, and I don't know whether it goes to Jared or not, but under capital projects, Fund 39, and under capital reserve, Fund 32, you have anticipated interest revenue of $2,000 for a $5 million fund, and an anticipated revenue of $4,000 for a not quite $3 million fund.
That would be because the interest rate that S&T Bank gives us is a lot better than what we can get elsewhere. But S&T cannot take those bond proceeds because they have strict rules that are tied with them that need to be tracked as such.
Okay, I just want to know why the,
And hopefully, as interest rates seem to be hopefully increasing here, that 2,000 can be increased.
okay, that's
We're
good.
not hoping for interest rates to increase.
and we'll
No,
cover
you're
that.
We're not hoping.
not. Okay,
We'll cover that spreadsheet in more detail down in the non-agenda items. So are we good with number 2, the East Pike roof project? Jared, you have everything you need?
Yeah, well, there'll be a motion on next Monday's agenda just to approve to go out to bid for that. We'll place it out to bid, and probably at the next Buildings and Grounds, we will have the results of those bids. We can discuss them then and have them on for approval at the end of March for that work to then begin as soon as school lets out, so, or close to.
Cheney, any feedback? Are you comfortable with everything, sir, from your perspective?
The roof has already been bid, hasn't it?
Yes, the roof's been bid and awarded. This is just the mechanical and some of the work, the
Right,
roof
okay,
drain.
Just making sure. 'Cause, yeah, I thought we
Yeah,
already
the board is all,
authorized
yep, the board approved that back in October and
that.
November.
In order to get this issue done.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all. Thanks, Eric, for moving on to number 3. I'd asked for this to be on here just because of the inferior quality a lot of times of the audio on these calls. And then we've also attended another meeting recently, and the audio was horrible on it. So, but from what I understand, the district obtained some new, are they Puck speakers?
Yeah,
Puck,
for lack of
Puck.
better terminology. Yeah, it looks like a hockey puck. Yep, and they seem to be working quite well.
Yes, much better. And I can definitely hear the front of the room, meaning Mike, Walter, Jared. I don't know if it's because of the
got a different one
location or if it's your voices. I don't, so we'll have to play with it some, but it's definitely better.
though. Well, the one that we have here looks like something out of the Starship Enterprise for a microphone versus the hockey pucks that the rest of the folks have. So I'm not sure whether it's the design of the microphone or the proximity.
Randy, is there anything you want to speak to the microphones for the committee?
Not really. I'll probably tweak it a little bit more tomorrow. I can. There's that mixing board there, and there's a lot of lows coming in on every single one of the mics. That makes it sound really deep. So I can try to take that out too.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot, Randy. It's a big improvement. So I'm sure the people that attend.
Randy, if we need to add more mics, is that a possibility as well?
Yeah, and I already ordered 2 more.
All right.
Yes, there is a possibility.
Great. Okay, moving on to non-agenda items. The previous meeting, we had someone come forward and made a presentation to us about some community members wanted to purchase outdoor tables at the high school field. From what I understand, people had seen these at the Armstrong School District and liked them, and may have seen them at other districts, and they would be placed close to the concession stand. We just wanted to bring it back now for a second discussion. It just happened to be a couple weeks ago, I went into a grocery store that sells food, and they had several of these sitting there, and I went over and checked them out and leaned on them and all that stuff, and they seemed fine. And I'm not sure, Cheney, you were going to maybe reach out to the Armstrong District to see if they had any comments or reservations on us adding these to our. And then the question came up: the people that are helping to purchase the tables asked if their names, and I don't know if it's individual names or business names, and to me it really doesn't matter, but Jared looked into what our policies are with that. So anything, Jared or Cheney?
I'll let Cheney go ahead and talk about the tables themselves if he has heard from anybody.
I did place a call and speak with my counterpart at Armstrong in the same position as I. And he was not there when the tables were purchased, but he knows of them and what they are. And he was fairly comfortable with the stability of the tables. They are a little bit taller, almost like a pub height. They're not a standard table height. And I had indicated to him that my only slight concern was that if we have people coming to watch games and they would place a small child on the edge of the table, that there could be a stability concern there, and I would be a little bit concerned about that. But he felt they're very good quality. He conveyed to me, and pretty stable. He didn't have that concern at all. The only other thing I would offer as a possibility, if we did have any concern along those lines, is we could maybe shorten them a few inches in height to counteract some of that possible instability if somebody were to place something heavy on one side. That's my only concern.
Yeah, and thanks, Cheney. And I checked that when I ran into these tables, and I don't think it's a problem. They're pretty stable, even though they're pub height. And the idea is there are not going to be chairs put around these. People will be able to stand, eat their food, set their drinks down, and still watch the game. So they'll be standing. So any other questions or anything? Jared, you're going to just briefly cover the what our policy says about putting names on these.
Yes, sir. I think, if we are taking donations to help pay for these, and that kind of seems what maybe different businesses or different community members want to make a donation to it. I see no issue with our policy of putting a plaque on there to say who donated the money for it. We've done that across the district for benches in memory of maybe somebody. So I see no issue with doing something like that for these tables too.
All right, so I'm going to throw out that we have a motion on next board meeting that, we'll accept the donation. We'll have in the motion what the cost of the district is going to be, because the proposal is that we would pay half. And then also put in there that, about the sponsorship or whatever we call that, the donation. Any other committee members have any questions?
Yeah, Terry, to be clear, the people who are bringing this table to us are going to pay about half the cost. And they're asking us to pay the other half. If they get a business sponsorship of that table, does that come off of our half or their half? So are we committing to spend X dollars, or is it possible that number will go down? Do you know that?
Well, I think they had got a cost estimate that they'd shared with us last month. They would have to check to see if those costs are still the same. And I'm going to throw out that they should pay for the plaque. You know, we would only pay for half of the table.
Yeah, I was just wondering if people step up and pay the rest, make donations, does that come off of our funds?
I think they already had committed donors when they brought the offer to us.
Yeah, that's
So
what I
they're
understood.
not gonna get any more donors.
Yeah, that's what they made it sound like. They had enough donations for a certain number of tables.
Can you
I think it was for
clarify?
8.
Yeah, I mean, the proposal from, I think the original person was, we already have half the money raised, we're just asking the district to pay the other half. And we are working, our tech departments are looking at how they could possibly, I know that was a question from the committee the last time, how they could incorporate actually building these tables ourselves here within the district as part of their curriculum. Now, like I said, they're taking a look at how they could possibly do that.
We have 3D printers, right?
We do.
How easy is that?
As someone who's 3D printed, do you want to wait a month and pay
Football
$5,000 for one table?
I think that's next item, Terry.
All right, so we're going to have a motion on next Monday's meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Number 2 is the infrared heat testing. I brought this up before. There's been several architects, engineers over the past several years that have recommended this. So we got some, Dave and Cheney worked and got some estimates. Jared, you want to explain?
I'll let Cheney cover that as he's here, sir.
Go ahead,
We
Cheney.
We did reach out to, it was either 4 or 5 electrical contractors. We got returns from 2 of those. And I believe, Jared, you sent out the information on those?
I did. I sent the stuff that Dave Bright had forwarded me. I sent on to the committee.
And one cost was, it was just conveyed in an email, it was $3,100. And the second cost was an actual formal bid. And if they do it on regular time, it was $2,288. And that company actually, it's not all infrared. Some of it was ultrasound, which they said is a better source of finding issues with connections as opposed to infrared. They only do that on the main switches, and then the infrared is in the regular panel boxes. So they were a very much more detailed scope of work, and it was about $800 cheaper.
Is this for one building or is this for all?
This was for Horace Mann.
Just Horace Mann.
Yes, sir.
We're not concerned about the other buildings?
That's where I thought where our concern was.
Well, that's what a concern is. I'm just curious
No, when we
why.
agreed, we said it would be Horse Man, remember? We didn't talk about the, it was for Horse Man.
Is there any reason that we're concerned about Horace Mann and not Ben Franklin?
Well, you'd have to go back to the minutes.
No, if the panels at Horace Mann are Federal Pacific, for instance, and they're not at the other buildings, then I could understand why we're doing one. If they're all the same panel and we have the same overloading problems that clearly at Ben Franklin because of the age, should we also be doing those panels too?
I think there are some other panels, Cheney, correct me if I'm wrong, within the building that we have some concerns. Horace Mann, I think, is certainly the most immediate. Is there panels at the high school as well that we have?
There are just the panels in that service the kitchen up at senior high, and that's something
Yeah.
I would like to move just to replace all the components inside those panels.
But it's,
I'm not arguing about not going Horace Mann. I'm concerned that we need to be also looking at some of these other problems. So, I mean, I'm all in favor of doing Horace Mann, but if there's other panels that you think need to be tested, I'm asking you to bring that back to the board and get, let's make sure we're not gonna burn down
but
other places.
Tom, I had these my insurance company required that I do this at my company and do the infrared scan of all the panel boxes. And I've got quite a few of them in several buildings. Their issue wasn't so much about the load that the box was carrying as much as over time, the connections either corrode or loosen. And then that causes more resistance, which causes the heat, which then potentially could cause the fire. So even though we all like to beat up on Federal Pacific, I'm not so sure that it's strictly
No,
an issue of one particular manufacturer.
The big aluminum feeder wires are supposed to be tightened up every year. And I haven't done that in my house in 25 years.
Yeah.
So that's what gets hot. Again, my point is that we have a lot of maybe old facilities practically that if change brings back, we need to do the testing here, here, and here. I want to hear about it.
All right, well, let's, I agree, Tom. I'd like to do Horseman, and then let's let Cheney get some estimates on the other buildings, excluding Eisenhower, I'm going to say.
We have to assume that the other scope of work might include new electrical panels.
Correct.
If you're excluding the electrical panels at Eisenhower, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it, we're done.
All right, we good with that?
Yep.
And we're going to have a motion then to do Horace Mann and Cheney. Which contractor do you recommend us go with?
That would be Schulteis.
That's what I thought. And I looked at both of the estimates, and that's what I was thinking also. So moving on to number 3, I'd asked Jared to put this spreadsheet together. Just wanted to get an idea of where we were at with all of our planned projects, what the cost estimates are for each one of them, and then what funding we have available, because I knew that it was gonna show a shortfall. So I don't know if Randy, you can bring that up, and then we can open it up for questions and discussion. And Julia, like I mentioned to you in an email, this will next need to go to your committee if we continue to plan to do all these projects, which I don't see. There's been nothing come out about that we're not going to do these projects. So it was a good thing to look at. Jared, if you briefly summarize the report.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. The first section is really just trying to summarize the funding we have available. The funding in the capital projects is money that is left over from the bond proceeds from 2016 that we are still carrying and still earning some interest on. Fund 32 is capital reserve. That is our typical kind of larger items or the funds that we use to fund larger items. The board has done an excellent job in the past couple of years of transferring money to there. When the general fund budget has had a surplus. So that's why at this point, there is $2.8 million sitting in capital reserve, which could be put towards Eisenhower as well, or any of these building projects here. At the end of last year, when we transferred 1.7, the conversation was using that for the East Pike roof.
So that's in if I'm understanding, you're including the transfers we made in the 2.8.
Absolutely. The 2.8 includes everything that's been transferred to date. Yes. And then it also is including part of the budget conversation was transferring 200,000 as part of is included in this year's budget. That has not been done yet. And then transferring another 200,000 at the end of 2023. And that was meant to fund the turf replacement at the high school. The capital reserve paid for that already. And then the general fund was going to reimburse the capital reserve over a 2-year period for that. So that's included in there as well.
And Jared, before you go ahead and scroll up some, Randy, but before you go off capital reserve, we want to keep some balance in there though at all time. With that total 2.855 million, really all of that is not available for these planned projects. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I mean, I would recommend keeping some money in there for just your normal year-to-year items that are paid for by capital
We
reserve.
don't have a policy that we have to follow on that number, so we could conceivably keep 100,000.
Yeah, the board can keep whatever they want in there, just knowing that if something comes up, the general fund may have to take it over.
That's something that audit and finance, Terry, could talk about, is what we would want to keep as a minimum in that account. But yeah, I mean, I do sort of think that we're going to use pretty much all of it. And we're going to have to figure out how to budget ourselves so that we can have more carryovers or, donations from the general fund into, what's the term you call that, Francis? We do it every year. We transfer.
To capital reserve. So that leaves just over $9 million that I have right now is available for any capital project within the district right now. And then starting with,
So you've estimated on that 2023, you think that's going to work? The 200,000.
I would say that just should be included in the budget because that was when
So so it's in the budget.
when we haven't approved the 22-23 budget yet, but I would include it in
Or
there.
we could challenge ourselves and put 350,000 in. Budget for it.
You
I
can
mean,
budget
I don't
whatever.
know how you came up with the 200, but I see no reason to stop there. We put 600 in it.
Well, we put 200 only because the turf cost 400,000, and when we decided to do that, it was over 2 years. We were going to cover the cost of that with budget transfers or transfers to capital reserve. Typically, what we do is at the end of the year, whatever, if the budget has a surplus, then we have the past 2 years transferred that
And add it to your
surplus.
Take
I
your
think-
point of that.
Pardon me, Julie, but I think sort of what we may be thinking here is taking another look to see how much we really could transfer again, whether it's 350,000, 200,000, or maybe it's another million, depending upon where the budget works out for this year and what our regular fund balance is. We have the potential to take a little more out of that general fund to put in here. And I mean, if the board decides to do everything, and if these costs wind up being close, if we could squeeze another $1 million out of the fund, then we'd only have to borrow $5 million to complete everything that's on this list, in at least conceptually.
Absolutely. I mean, my hope is at the end of this year, 6/30/2022, we're transferring over 200,000. I mean, we've had, we've done a bond refinancing that saved us some money this year. There are some other things that may allow us, just like we did this year. We didn't budget for a $1.7 million budget transfer to capital reserve. So my hope is that 200,000 is more
Right.
at the end of this year, and hopefully more at the end of 6/30/2023.
You'll probably need to pay attention to that as you're going through the budget process this spring.
If we're talking about expenditures, we're beginning to talk about expenditures, the East Pike roof replacement's already contracted for. So
Go ahead and scroll up, Randy.
Yeah, that one we have to pay for. And the administration, the HVAC system administration, we have to pay for.
The other way, go to the expenditures down. Yeah, scroll down, I mean, sorry.
There you go. And we're gonna be, unless Tom and Elijah makes a miracle, we're gonna get the 12 million figure for Eisenhower. So we only really have the one building that the East Pike old office renovation that we haven't committed to. And I'm concerned that we're not spending any money at Ben Franklin ever. And it seems like we need to start going into Ben Franklin and fixing the ADA things, fixing some of the things that need to be fixed over there. We're gonna have a Taj Mahal over here, and we're gonna have not a Taj Mahal over there.
We've been pretty disciplined about selecting these projects.
I understand.
And so we've never excluded Ben Franklin.
Well, no, but it's excluded on this list.
Yeah, but that wasn't the point. I wasn't understanding so if we're gonna venture off into Ben Franklin, we'll be here all night. We could set another meeting for it. But it does seem to me that where I wanna know is more about this list, which is, I'm a little confused on the Eisenhower number. I understand what we just went through the exercise with the architects, but we were also talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, we were talking about renovating the addition, the side of it facing towards McCreary. That would run, I guess, what, north-south, that wing? Does that,
Scroll down, Randy.
Yeah, that, I mean, the 11.2 is renovation of the whole entire building and additions.
so you're including the wing that wasn't damaged, as damaged?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's what I wasn't sure if that was, okay, so that's been deleted, but my point still stands. You're going off into something that's not on the list and you want to add it to the list. And
This
I
is the
can't
first time
see,
I've seen this list. And-
no, we've gone over this in our committee,
Well-
not the back half, but we've talked about it.
Yes, we've talked about Ben Franklin. And to leave Ben Franklin off this list gives us a false sense of security.
No, this
I
is.
don't think it does, Tom. I mentioned earlier that, you know, at some point after we're done with Eisenhower, then we're probably going to move to Ben Franklin. So I don't, you know,
This is.
I haven't excluded it.
We haven't excluded, but
Well,
this takes us
why is
through
it
to
on this-
2023.
Why is it on this list if you're not excluded?
Well, what, we could put the whole deferred maintenance.
The project's not designed, or all these projects are in the pipeline being designed and bid.
And my
So
problem.
that's
with-
a separate, that's a different type of project.
My problem with the East Pike office is that it never dawned on me that we'd be at 600,000 for the East Pike office renovation. And we're not doing anything at Ben Franklin for their office, for their accessibility, for some of the improvements that we know exist at Ben Franklin. That we need to acknowledge, we need something on this list to acknowledge the Ben Franklin expenditure.
And we'll have to develop a scope, then we'll have to get a design estimate, we'll have to get a construction estimate. And we can do that, you know, that'll be another step, but
I think in my opinion, I understand what Tom's trying to get at. There are some more pressing needs at Ben Franklin. The question I think that really the board needs to decide is, do we want to attack some of those pressing needs as one-offs? Or what I'm sensing is, once we're completed with Eisenhower, there's never been a complete renovation of Ben Franklin. And do we then bite the bullet and spend $8 or $10 or $12 million to renovate Ben Franklin and bring it up to speed, and then do those one-offs at that point in time? I think that's the question.
yeah, and that's where I'm at, Walter.
The one-offs, I would like to treat East Pike as the one-off and fix some of the glaring deficiencies that are at Ben Franklin as part of this process. If we're going to go out and borrow additional funds, I'd like to have enough funds that we can at least address some of the critical functions and academic functions of Ben Franklin.
We haven't
Functional
talked about
functions.
borrowing money yet.
It's down here at the bottom.
I know,
Additional
but we
funding
haven't,
required.
this is a projection.
I understand that, but if you leave Ben Franklin out of the discussion entirely, we do not start Ben Franklin into 2024.
All right, well then write it on here. Just, what do you want to say?
$2 million for Ben Franklin.
All right, fine.
Am I mistaken? Do we or did we not have Buchard Horn do preliminary drawings, investigating into doing an elevator and or a ramp? So we've got some of that, we should have some of that already started.
We had, yeah, it was pretty preliminary, but we did have a initial look at that. And we did include a ballpark number for in our latest, whenever we were going through the district options, we looked at some number that was optional to renovate, partial renovation of Ben Franklin, and providing the same admin wing essentially that's been provided here would be provided at Eisenhower as one of the additions that has the lock and an updated admin. The mousetrap, I think it's been referred to as.
You said Eisenhower, you mean, you're talking about doing that at Ben Franklin
At Ben
also?
Franklin as well, yeah.
So we
so-
have numbers on that?
There, yeah, we do have it's a ballpark number, but
Does 2
It's a
million
number,
cover
it's
it?
a number. Huh?
Does 2 million cover it?
I don't remember.
When did
Off
we
the
come
top
up
of my
with the
head.
number? Was it pre-pandemic? Because the
Oh, gosh, yes.
the elevator and the.
Pre-pandemic.
It was
the,
ramp
ramp
along
was-
with the reconfiguration figures. The
Yeah,
only
it
thing
was
that I
part of
tried
that
to
same
include on
spreadsheet.
here was stuff that has actually been approved by the board to move forward with.
Right, yeah.
I just think you're a day late and a dollar short on this particular list. The
And
last
this is
meeting
early.
you. Okay, all right.
You're just
All right, I'll
early.
go with that too.
Yeah,
They want this to be just what's already working right
So-
now.
If we could just
I
decide,
think
you
I can
always
keep
want
it
to move
simple.
fast, and here we are slowing down to figure out what we had decided
So-
on,
So
which is fine.
I
can go
think-
with the flow, just go with it.
I think the criteria, again, was this was stuff that the board had either approved or was in the pipeline. My suggestion, Terry, would be, we're $6 million short to complete everything that's on this list. And at some point, we'll have to figure out where the rest of that money's coming from, whether it's borrowed or whatever. And so my suggestion would be, maybe we do take another look at what the questions that Tom is raising about, as far as Ben Franklin, that this committee do that, buildings and grounds. And then with the idea that when we go to raise the additional funds, then we can make a decision whether to do that project at that time and try to secure those funds to do it with. And maybe that's a way to kind of move this thing forward then.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Like I said, this was just the planned projects that are in the pipeline, and most of them are, maybe all of them are approved. We can definitely revisit that. We'll revisit the scope, and then we'll revisit whether we want to do it at a separate project or do it as a total renovation of the building. So.
Yep.
And I'm going to go on. It's 7:12 p.m. I'm going to say too that my experience dealing with projects and this many of them, don't be surprised if that 6 million grows due to many reasons: scope creep, cost, inflation, and then. The other thing too, I'll say again, that we have to keep some money in that capital reserve money. So that 6 million is a little bit more than 6 million already. So,
You have one last thing on your agenda, Terry?
yep. And that's the Wi-Fi on the buses. And we had said we'd bring this back one more time. Jared?
Yes, sir. Randy and I and Mr. Travis have had some conversations over the past month. Randy just kind of really working with some of our cyber kids, our quarantine kids, kind of getting a good feel for what is, Wi-Fi availability across this district. There's definite issues throughout our district as areas that do not have good Wi-Fi access. And also kind of traveling outside of our district to some other schools, because we had some conversations about placing Wi-Fi on buses for athletics. We still see some issues there. At this point, we are recommending not investing money into putting Wi-Fi on buses because of the limited access at this point. Certainly, there's been conversations with all the stimulus dollars happening right now, county investments about increasing broadband, hopefully in the near future, which could lead us into having some conversations at that time, I think, of adding Wi-Fi to buses to help kids at that point. But at this point, Mr. Travis, Mr. O'Neill, and myself are not recommending doing it because of the limited broadband service we have across the district.
Okay, Jared, thanks. Any questions, comments, anything like that? That seemed to be the mood of the previous meeting also. Anything else? Questions, comments on that? Nothing heard. Anything for the good of the order? Again, nothing heard. This meeting is being adjourned. Thank you all. And we're gonna meet in executive session then.